Hello, and welcome to The Source Within with Chloe Pedalino, where I share the source within me with hopes it sparks the source within thee. Hello, and welcome to The Source Within with Chloe Pedalino, where I am shared today with Chris Zappola of Nature's Energy. And we are here today, before I have Chris introduce himself, we are here today to talk about self-care, which is a topic I've been wanting to talk about for a little while now, especially after this wild summer, lots of energies, lots of solar flares going on, and a lot of self-work, I think, has been going on and a lot of clearing out and releasing. And so I thought this was a good topic to bring up about how do we then replenish ourselves? How do we bring kind of the nurturing back to ourselves as we're going through all these kinds of energies? We're also going into Virgo season, which is about mind-body connection. Yoga is something that I thought we could kind of focus in on a little bit more, but under that umbrella of self-care, taking care of ourselves, etc. So that is what we're here to talk about today, and wanting to introduce Chris Zappola from Nature's Energy. Thanks so much for being here.
Hey Chloe, thank you so much for having me. Hello, everybody.
Met via a Reiki training, and we have stayed
Yes,
connected ever since. Yes. And do you want to just introduce yourself a little bit more?
actually, it was the synchronicities of two Reiki classes we did.
That's true.
The
Yeah.
first one, we sort of, but we bonded our animal Reiki, and then our master one, yeah. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah. Hi, I'm Chris, Chris Zappola. I am based out of New Jersey, right now in Somerset. So anyone from New Jersey listening, because it's kind of like Central Jersey. They say we don't exist, but we do. Um, Yes, I am. I feel like I'm a Batman or something. Like I have a day job and a night job. But no, by day I'm an ESL teacher, a K through 5 ESL teacher. But my passion is I am a yoga instructor, Reiki master, breath coach, all in all holistic kind of wellness, kind of therapeutic practitioner.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I teach yoga classes, Reiki practitioner, do attunements. I have an email list and all. I like to get just be in line with nature, I guess. And that's where I get
Yeah.
my company name, I guess, Nature's Energy, just being zen in flow with nature.
That's right. Zen and in flow with nature. I love that. And it's so fitting you're talking about working and doing multiple jobs and multiple passions, because cards of the Magi, I'm going to start doing this with all of my guests on my show,
Oh,
which is talking
I'm
about
excited.
what their cards are. And Chris's cards, he is March 20th for anybody who has this birthday. Your card is the Three of Diamonds. That is your birth card. Your secondary card is either the Nine of Spades, which is what Chris is, your planetary ruling card, or you are the Seven of Diamonds, depending on if you are a Pisces. If you are a Pisces, you are a Nine of Spades. If you are a Aries, you are a Seven of Diamonds. But just briefly to talk about your birth card, the Three of Diamonds. So threes on the high side are creativity, and you are of the diamond suit. Diamonds are about values and about money. When we see
I
the
was gonna say, please
three,
say rich.
yeah, there we
Please say
go.
rich.
Okay, well, yeah, so that is something that you are gifted in a lot of ways. Basically, three is about creativity, transformation, taking these ideas and helping them to blossom. But you have threes, meaning you have multiple different, it makes total sense that you have multiple different businesses, because you basically, it's a diversification of where you're getting money from, or it's like a diverse set of values. But in the mundane, in our 3D world, we happen to value money, which is why diamonds are often related to money. And so it's very fitting that you have the side business, your main job, and then almost like two side, kind of, you're spreading out in your side business to do more like Reiki attunements and this sort of thing. So it's like totally in line with that. And I chuckled
Yeah.
to myself when I was looking up your card, and I was like, yep, that makes sense. And it totally makes sense with how you just introduced yourself there. Um, and the low sides for threes can be worry and indecision. Threes, what they're you are basically embodying the higher side of a three and a three lifestyle, which is making sure and giving yourself outlets for creativity. So whenever anybody has a three, if they're not using that creativity outlet, then they feel in misalignment. They're not aligned with themselves. So you are embodying a beautiful way to use three energy, basically, by using these
Cool.
multiple paths. Yeah. And shall be
Cool.
successful with those multiple revenue streams because you're using your creativity and developing those. So yeah.
That is
Yeah.
so cool. That is so
Yeah.
cool.
Just a little info, and that's just about your birth card and like that's just your initial meaning. Based on that information, we all have different life paths that kind of outline more about our lives in the future. Our every 52-day period of our life is ruled by certain cards. So like if I were to look up what your period was, I could tell you more. It's much more in depth, but just going over the first birth card is something I'm wanting to be doing. So yeah, thanks for indulging me and letting me do that for you.
That is so cool. In yoga, that's like so funny. In yoga, we call it in Ayurveda, it's sister science of yoga. That's like vata energy. Very creative, but like indecisive at the same time. So I totally get it. Totally get
Love
it.
that. There you go. Vata
Yeah.
energy. I love that.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah, and just for listeners out there, people who are interested, I just published a class on this so they can check it out at thesourcewithin.com. So people can check it out there. So, yeah, without further ado, you're bringing it up, Vata energy. But I guess we could start with a little bit about self-care. I'm curious about, I guess I'll just start with this isn't something, even though I'm a therapist, I've been a counselor, I'm in the field of mental health, self-care is not, and prioritizing my self-care over giving or serving or doing for others is not something that's always come easy to me. And so this is why I wanted to have somebody else on this show too, to be able to dialogue around this, because again, it's not something that super comes easy to me, but we know it's incredibly important for physical health, mental health, and the alignment of all of those, spiritual health as well. So, do you want to share just like, I guess what do you think about when you think about self-care? What does that mean to you? Why do you think it's important?
Well, self-care for me is multiple things. It's like a whole toolbox of things for me.
Mm,
But really it's just coming down into like deep sense. It's like a deep listening, right? Because self-care can mean something different for everyone, right? And it can also mean something different for you every moment of your life at any different stage of your life, right? Any given
yeah.
day. So
That's a
what
good point. So
self-care
maybe
is.
we start with how do we recognize if we need self-care? Maybe that's a good start.
Exactly. Well, I mean, we all need it, please. We all need
Sure.
it in today's, even us as like self-care. God, we're not even
People.
gurus. I think we're just practitioners, please. I'm a
Right.
nowhere guru. Practitioners, they think, we have all the answers, but no, please, honey, we need our self-care too.
So I think like tapping into so some things I guess I've noticed where it's like, oh, maybe this is something where I need some self-care. It might be like more irritability than normal, or like I feel like I just don't have quite as much patience. Sometimes can come up, or feeling like my compassion barometer is just it's low. Like I don't have a high threshold for that. So I guess that can lead into kind of getting irritable with people. Certainly tired and fatigued, but I feel like for folks that are kind of chronically tired and fatigued, I have some of this. I'm sure parents have it, obviously, with kids, but that's something where sometimes it's hard to know. Is this just like a chronic tiredness or am I actually tired and I need to get rest? That's a big one for me when I'm trying to work on like is more rest is good. Then obviously we have like is our physical body yelling out in some way that we need to pay more attention to, but we kind of just take ibuprofen and just scoot through it, ignore. So these are kinds of signs I'm tuning people into, and it's not something to necessarily ignore. It's something that our bodies are telling us or our minds are telling us we need to address, and that can be
Mm.
through self-care.
Yeah.
So just throwing it out there for people who might not even know when do they even need it. So those are some indicators.
Well, it all comes down to, I think, at the end of the day, too, and you said it too, it's like taking a break, right? So this is why I mean it can mean a whole bunch of things, right? At the end of the day, we just kind of need to slow down. That's the
Mm,
first thing we need to do, right? So slow down. Take that moment, take that pause, whatever that is for you, take a few breaths and really ask yourself. And this is where it could be a whole toolbox of things. For me, it's yoga, it's Reiki, it's breath it's breath practices, right, which goes into our yoga practice as well. But for other people, it can be other different kind of holistic modalities. This is why I love all these kind of holistic modalities, because they treat the patient as a whole, right? We're the whole being,
Right.
right? We're not just our problems. So there's something going on a deeper level. And this is what I look at with yoga as well.
Mm,
Not just treating, not just, which is like really up and coming now. It's like really not just treating the physical ailment. We've known this with our Reiki practice as well. All these kind of holistic practices, they say it in different ways, but it all kind of comes into one path, if that makes sense. It's like the body is more than the body. Physical pain or sensations that we're feeling is usually the last stop on the journey of whatever this
mm,
energetic field is, whatever you want to call it, right? Of telling us maybe something's going on at a deeper level. So like if I'm feeling pain in my arm right now or a constant pain in my arm, okay, yeah, that could be maybe all right, I'm sleeping wrong, right? But it's just not physical. So maybe then we go in yoga, we call these koshas, or like and like if you ever watch Shrek, like layers of an onion, right?
ah,
So
yes.
we're layered beings, right? So, but we go subtler and subtler and subtler on those levels. And in order to go subtler and subtler on those levels, we need to stop and we need to listen. So this is what these practices are
Yes.
teaching us, right?
Got
So
it.
yeah, I might have that pain, but maybe it's something going on. Maybe I have to change my behaviors, right? It's not
Sure.
just a physical pain. It could be happening on an emotional level, a mental
Totally.
level.
And I have a
Yeah.
great example of that, I feel like, which is I've been looking at a lot of about divine feminine and masculine. I'm going to be recording on some this soon because it's a big topic coming up, but I've been noticing it like and you're right on, is like when are we listening to our bodies? I've been trying to do a lot more of that. And I've had this right shoulder injury now for like a year and a half. And when I was tuning into like the balance on my left, receiving part of my body, the feminine versus my right, the giving, the masculine, my right is just full on domineering, right? To the point where if I listened more subtly to what this means, not like at the injury, just like you're saying, but it's like beneath the surface, it's this over giving, this over dominant masculine aspect of myself. And it's not been balanced like with this left. So just to kind of give an example of what you're referring to, I think that's kind of what maybe a little
Hmm.
bit what you're talking about is there's this under
Yeah.
layers as well.
Oh yeah, without
And
a
I love
doubt.
that it's totally true with the onion because that's the thing is I feel like we peel
I,
something off and there's more to address, right?
I mean, it could be something that smells better, but I was thinking Shrek because that's one of my favorite movies. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, but peeling away though, I mean that's a perfect way to describe it is like peeling away those layers. But so what you're talking about is twofold because I'm thinking, okay, how do people really listen? We've got so much stuff coming at us. I think I'll talk about this in other episodes too, but it's sometimes it's hard for us to actually listen. What I'm hearing is that for those who maybe aren't at the step where they're listening yet first before engaging in self-care, doing some yoga is what I'm hearing maybe can provide some space for listening. Is that a little bit what you were saying as well, or?
Yes, yes and no, not just yoga. Like I said, it can be any kind of practice that resonates with you. Some people like Tai Chi. There's such
Mm.
practices that, if you ever heard of EFT, emotional freedom technique, as well. It's like the tapping, mind over matter. For me, it's yoga and Reiki. For a majority, a lot of people, we see it's yoga. But what I also want to get through is that a lot of students that come to the yoga practice or even beginners, they think that yoga is just the physical, where it's just actually not. It's actually more than that, right?
Okay, yeah. So I would love to talk more about yoga. Yeah, so please get into it. I guess I'll to frame it, I've been going through my own awakening process the past year and a half, maybe longer than that. And I've been studying various modalities and practices and all sorts of things. And so, although I've been doing yoga, but I mean yoga from my prior perception of it was more of this kind of it's this physical stretching, you do the poses, that's what yoga is. And then as I've been studying a little bit more, I'm like, oh wait, that's not at all just what yoga is. In fact, like there's a ton more to it, and that's just one fragment, one segment of it. And I was so surprised that I didn't realize that before I asked you here to talk more about it. As somebody that knows more about that, it's almost like we lost some of the really important messages and teachings of yoga when it transferred from east to west. And in the west now, a lot of people think about it just as the poses. So I wanted to talk more about it's not just the poses. And so I think it was like the 19th century that yoga came from the East, then over to the West, is my understanding.
But the actual practice of yoga, not really per se the physical practice, because the physical practice is more of a fairly sort of new thing, newer in the whole,
Huh?
but the actual study of yoga in general is like super, super old. It's like predates, I want to say it's like around 5,000 years old, right?
Yeah, if
Um,
not before. My understanding was like this is almost like the most original
so this is why
spiritual, like old. This is way original, is
And
my
this is why I really
understanding.
love it too, because like all these practices are super ancient and like science
Yeah,
and all that is now like figuring out like, wow, these like woo woo kind of
right.
practices, like there's a science base of like
Yes.
evidence to this too, you know? But yeah, no, it's
Yes.
around 5,000 years old. It originated from like the Indus Valley, so India around there. So it's based in the tradition of Hinduism there. And what it actually, the first they say mention of yoga, I believe it was, comes from these ancient, like spiritual texts. I don't know if you've ever heard of, or any of your listeners ever heard of the Vedas.
Yeah.
I don't know if, have you ever heard? Okay, so there are four Vedas, and what they said was these actually might even predate like the Bible. Like they are like the maybe I think scholars say like they're the first religious kind of texts predated or whatnot. But anyway, they were channeled by what they called rishis or sages. And these sages, rishis, would what should I call it, meditate under deep, deep, deep meditation concentration for hours, days, and stuff. And then they would channel what we would call source, God, creator, whatever you want to call it, right? And they would channel them into these large texts that they called the Vedas, and there was four of them. Out of them, yoga was first mentioned out of the Rig Veda, I believe it's called, the Rig Veda. Um, and out of these, we also have like parts of the Vedas, right? So there's four parts of each spiritual text there. I believe they
There's
said the
four of
three
the
first,
four. There's
exactly, four little parts and the little four parts, exactly. It
okay.
was like consisted of four parts. So all these Vedas were like consisted of rituals and stuff to do in order to the whole goal was find liberation, right? That's everyone's kind of goal in life, right? We all
So
want to
was it
find like
like liberation? Are we talking about like enlightenment, that kind of term use?
exactly. So
Okay.
every practice calls it something different. Like in Macau, Usui was looking for Anshin Jitsume. That was their form of enlightenment. This was
And
we
that's
call
referring
something
to
different.
Reiki, just for people who don't know. He was just
Exactly,
referring to Reiki.
exactly. Sorry about that. Um,
No.
but yeah, their whole goal was if you do these practices right, you'll brush off or you'll clean what they call these energetic samskaras in your lifetime, right? So we all accumulate samskaras can roughly translate to like grooves or ridges. I kind of think of like clockworks in a way. So everything's kind of like in a circle, right? Flowing. So they're like grooves or ridges in like our karmic
That's what I
lifetimes
was
or
gonna.
whatever, right?
That's what I was just gonna
Exact,
ask. I was like, is it talking about karma? Because like these,
exact.
and
So
so
it's
we
talking a lot
accumulate.
about karma.
Okay.
Exactly. So each lifetime you accumulate so and so karma, right? But the whole goal of all these practices, right, was to find liberation, meaning find that oneness with God, creator, source, whatever, and to maybe reincarnate or not reincarnate into like suffering, right?
Okay. Right.
As
So
not being pessimistic, but sometimes life is
yeah.
suffering, right?
Well, right. So like this idea of enlightenment, meaning that you eventually will reach this point where you aren't required, if I want to use that term, because we're not ever really required because we decide to come into this life, but where we have
Exactly.
mastered enough. This is basically what ascended masters are. I want to explain this to people that like an ascended master means that somebody has reached this place of enlightenment where they they don't have to come back into the third dimension to work out whatever it is. They've kind of completed that work in the third dimension where they then can live on in existences in higher dimensions. Not to say that they won't come back to the third realm, but like that's you don't have to anymore, I guess is the point. And when they're talking about suffering, being the idea of like we create our own suffering in our existence through our minds and through our thoughts and our negative thoughts. And if we can get control of those, then we have less suffering in this existence. But that's not so easy to do, which is why life can be suffering in some ways. I don't know if I'm getting too
No,
off there, but I just kind of was throwing out. What
No,
what we
no,
mean by suffering. It doesn't mean like, I mean, it can mean suffering in the ways that people traditionally think about it, but there's some suffering, quote unquote, in the third dimension that doesn't necessarily happen in the higher realms, I guess is what I'm saying too.
exactly. That non-duality there, right?
Yes, there you go. That's right. That's right.
So yeah, from the Vedas, you have what you call, there was three, like I said, in each Veda there was like little four parts to them, right? All again, rituals and sacrifices, how to find this liberation. But it was out of the Rig Veda, I think the fourth part, we get the Upanishads, they call it, another spiritual text, right? And these were more rituals, like more that they were less for what rituals for what they had for the Brahmins or the priests of those times, right?
Mm.
So
Hmm.
less for the spiritual people and more for the homeowners or the homeowners there, right? For everyone, everyday people. So liberation was more accessible for the everyday person, right?
Mm.
So this is where we get the Upanishads and more of this talk of yoga, right? And you ever heard of maybe even your listeners, this is the Upanishads is where we get the epic, the Bhagavad Gita. Ever heard of that?
Bhagavad Gita, did you say?
No, I have the book here if you want. The Bhagavad Gita is really,
The
if you're ever a
Bhagavad
yoga student,
Gita.
yes, it is a great epic. It retells the story of Arjuna and Krishna, one of the deity gods in Hinduism, and it talks a lot about our dharma or our kind of life's purpose, our path in life, right? Our job and path. Because in this story, you have Arjuna going to war with his family, and Krishna, or who is like disguised as one of his charioteers there, is saying that you need to go to war, like, but he's going to war against his family and friends and he doesn't want to kill them. But then at the end he finds out that that's his dharma and then he has to do it, but he finds liberation through that. So it's just fine, as sad as
Mm.
it sounds. It's like, it's a very good spiritual text. But yeah, so this is where we get a lot of this yoga talk here. And from the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads, we get four little branches of yoga we call them jnana yoga, karma yoga, bhakti yoga, and raja yoga. So they all are little paths of yoga. We call
Okay.
jhana would be like the pursuit of wisdom, the wisdom or the knowledge kind of path. And karma is like, action or service. Bhakti is more of that kind of what we get from that Bhagavad Gita, kind of that the devotional service to like God, creator, whatever you want to call that. So any of your listeners might be, I mean, prayer or
Or
gospel sing. Exactly. So we think of like gospel singing, or like in the yoga path, we do it to a kirtan, where it's like a lot of the call and response. You're just chanting mantras. But if I love them, you just get into it's a meditative state, but it's just you get into a very devotional, and you don't even have to believe in these gods or whatnot. But it's just like, you know what? It's like just
I
believing
feel
in
like it's
something so
like a
beautiful, you know?
daily this
Mm,
notion of devotion. I think about it like maybe it's similar to like the Reiki mantra. Just for today, I will not worry. Just for
yeah,
today, I will not be angry. Just for today, I will
yeah,
do the work. It's just like a little otherwise just a practice, a daily kind of practice where you're checking in with there's some sort of spiritual self.
hmm
Is that kind of what it is?
yeah,
Okay. So
yeah,
wisdom, action, some sort of daily
yeah.
devotion or meditation practice. And what was the
Yeah,
other
and
one?
then the Raja devotion you have, and then in Raja is either the royal path or they call it the meditative path sometimes. A lot of the
Oh,
loose
that's the meditative.
translation. From those four paths, we have all, the students practicing, but from those four paths, we have a very famous yogi called our sage called Patanjali. And he was the one who created what we call our Yoga Sutras, which I consider sometimes like as the Bible of yoga. This is where we base, I don't know if you've ever heard or your readers, Yoga Sutras are a book compiled of around like 100 and I think there's sometimes we vary 195 I think do we say or 196 sutras in Sanskrit is threads out of the weave, right? But
Ah.
195 to 196 aphorisms or little one-liners, right, about the
Mm.
yogic practice. And there's really no talk of asana or what we would call our physical practice there.
Okay.
But it's from this whole book that we get one of the main kind of, if we could encompass yoga and what's the main idea or goal of yoga, it's from out of these 196, 95 little one-liners.
Okay.
His second sutra, his second thread, in Sanskrit, it's yoga shchita vritti nirodha, which means yoga is the cessation or the stilling of the fluctuations of the mind. And that can mean a whole
Can we
bunch of
say that
things.
again?
So
Say that
I
again.
love, so this is what encompasses the whole yoga practice. It's yoga is the cessation of the fluctuations of the mind. These little
Mm,
vrittis, we call these fluctuations. These fluctuations could be anything, right? Your thought
sure.
patterns, even
Your emotions,
feeling
how you
pain, right?
respond to
When
your
you,
environment,
exact,
fears, worries, happy, anything.
So this is without even the asana, the physical practice right now. This is just encompassing yoga right now. So this is where we can get in modern day where, like I say, yoga could be anything for people. It doesn't have to be this exact yoga practice that I practice with what we call an eight limb path, which I'll tell you more about. But it can be Reiki, right? So if Reiki or Tai Chi or just breathing, which is part of yoga practice and part of any kind of holistic practice, anything that stops those fluctuations of the mind, that's yoga. If it's going
Right.
outside for a walk, this is what I tell my clients. If it's going outside for a nature walk and for those 5 minutes, your mind is still, which no one's mind is going to be completely still, right? Things are
Sure.
still going to go in and out. But what the whole practice is too, is just taking those moments and noticing when those fluctuations happen, not letting them control you and being like, okay, it's there. Can't really do
Yeah.
anything about it. The only thing I can do is breathe or continue with my day, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
So for those who are in the mental health field, it's so interesting how there's so much overlap here, which is I love
oh,
that
it's
I'm
so
bridging.
much.
I love bridging all this together. But in what we call DBT, which is dialectical behavioral therapy, there's this approach of the Teflon pan. And the Teflon pan, when you are basically how do you sit with your thoughts and not get attached to them and let them slide off like the cookies on a baking sheet, super greased baking sheet, and how do you slide off and not get too attached to those thoughts and let them flow and redirect back to kind of being present or still in the moment. So much crossover, and here we are. This is ancient wisdom and practices from thousands of years ago. Anyways, is definitely prevalent in our modern day society. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt.
So
Keep going.
no, 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 not at all, not at all. So from the Raja Yoga path, this is Patanjali's from this path. In his Yoga Sutra book too, this is where he talks about, we first get mention of this eight limb path, which we
Okay.
call in Sanskrit Ashtanga Yoga, which
Mm,
some viewers and even yourself, you might have heard of Ashtanga Yoga today, which is not to be confused with the actual style of practice. Ashtanga is the actual practice of yoga, or excuse me, the name of the whole path of yoga. Ashtanga was a different style of yoga, more physical. But Ashtanga, eight limb, eight fold, could also be translated path. And what it's saying is there's these eight steps, or
mm,
yeah, eight steps that you follow in your yoga path, right? Which
mm.
constitute what is yoga. This is why we all, especially I always say as a yoga teacher and all yoga teachers, we all try to say yoga is just not the asana, the pose, what we call, right? So these eight limbs, right? So our first one, right? Even before physical postures, we start with principles, right? Just like our Reiki practice, and I say the same thing. So we have what's called our yamas in yoga. This is our first branch of our eight limb path, right?
Okay.
Yamas, which we call could be translated maybe ethical restraints, right? We consider these like moral guidelines on how we
Okay.
interact with the world around us. Okay.
Okay.
So out of these yamas, we have five that we try to practice, right? In Sanskrit, we call it ahimsa, nonviolence. So what does that mean? This is why you might see traditionally a lot of maybe true yogi, or not true yogis, like devout yogis, we might say, right? Or who really follow it. Ahimsa nonviolence, they might be vegetarian or vegan because they don't want to harm animals or nature. Right? These yama practice can actually, you can spend the second practice as well, you can spend a whole lifetime practicing, right? Before
I'm
you would
sure.
even do your physical practice, right? Because it's not just on the physical aspect there. Ahimsa, nonviolence could be nonviolence to yourself, right? But that can also be nonviolent thoughts. So
Right.
practicing each day, trying not to have nonviolent thoughts, or if you do, not really worrying about them that much. Does that make sense?
And I'm imagining, yeah, we have non-violence, but I'm also imagining non-harmful. Basically, if
Exactly.
we're
So
thinking about your thoughts
non-harmful.
can be harmful to yourself, like I'm stupid, or I don't know, whatever. Something
Ex
a negative self-talk basically is harmful. basically. So,
So if you want to work on that, do the
yep,
opposite. Then you would be practicing. There you go. You're practicing yoga that day. You're practicing nonviolence, non-harm. But
yep,
it can also be non-harm towards other people, right? Are your words
sure.
harmful? Are you saying harmful words to people? Then you have your second yama. So each one has five. You have your yamas and niyamas. You have nonviolence. You have truthfulness. So we call that satya. Again, sometimes we just tell those little white lies throughout the day. But in Reiki, we talk about a lot, and especially holy fire, it interlaps. Holy fire is that authentic self. This is what that
Yeah,
satya is too. Are you being true to yourself, right?
yeah.
On your
Mm,
day to day. This in my yoga practice too. So ahimsa satya kind of they all overlap. In a
sure.
yoga practice, when you're practicing physical, right? We all think we want to touch our toes, right? But sometimes that's not it. Okay, everyone's body is different. I
Right.
can't even touch my toes half the time. So if I go past my limits, then I'm not practicing ahimsa because I'm
Mm.
harming myself, right? I'm tearing something.
Ah,
But then I'm also not practicing satya because I'm not being true to myself. I should know
mm,
myself and know my limits. Does that make sense?
I get totally.
So yeah, satya, truthfulness. But again, you can
Yeah,
you can
there's so many
spend
levels to it.
lifetimes,
Yeah, so many
so many
levels to it.
levels.
Because when you first said truth, I was like, oh, Satya. I was like, oh yeah, I got this. My second card in my cards, planetary ruling card is the King of Clubs, which is like the truth, the knowledge, the truth keeper. It's the highest card you can have, the mental suit. I was like, oh yeah, truth, really. And I'm very passionate about sharing, getting to the core truths and all this. But you said a really good point, which I didn't consider, which is taking it totally deeper is my own truth to myself, my own
That's
authentic
what it
self,
is.
my own
That's
listening to my core. What is my source within? What is my, personal truth, which is a different way than I kind of think about it in this, you know, external way of thinking about I'm going to share the truth with everybody. No, it's less about that. It's more of your internal truth, going to your source within,
hmm
really is your internal knowing.
exactly. How many times do we agree to do plans when we really don't want to do it? That's not being true to yourself either. Then we go on to the third one. We have asteya, non-stealing. So again, this could be, I use it a lot for stealing time, right? This is why I try to be, especially with
Mm.
my yoga classes, we try to be on time because time's important, right? So
Oh, I struggle with that.
if you're constantly late to someone or you stay overtime on classes, I mean, again, you can go deeper and deeper. This is just one example. You're stealing someone's time. You can also be stealing your time. You can think about it as too. If you're just sometimes we get into those lazy ruts and we're not doing anything. You're kind of stealing time from yourself
Your
as
own.
well.
Yeah.
We have none. So we have brahmacharya, which is moderation. They call it, this can go sometimes. I mean, on the old text, they say more sexual, like sexual constraint, right? But this is also
Mm.
just preserving your energy. And this can be anything, right? Because at the end of the day, we're trying to preserve that energy. So trying to keep that balance. So there's different practices for that. And then for the last yama, we have aparigraha. So I'm probably butchering the pronunciation, but it's non-possessiveness. So it's just not trying not to, non-attachment, right? They always say
Mm.
attachment leads to suffering, right? So trying to find, again,
That's
knowing
like
that everything's in constant change, right? Everything's eventually gonna die, or everything's eventually gonna, not be the same. So trying not to get attached to that, because if we do, then, we're not living in the
yeah.
moment there.
Well, so non-attachment probably to the material world, like to things, to items, I imagine. But I wonder if there's also an aspect of like
But
unconditional love
but
that,
also mental, not getting attached to your mental thoughts either,
yeah,
right?
true. Yeah, I see.
Not getting attached to those stories you have in your mind, right? If
Yeah,
someone says something about you, oh, Chloe, Chloe always grew up like this way, or she's acting this way. How many times do we believe that,
right.
right?
Sure.
How many times do we get attached to that false idea, right?
That false narrative or yeah. Totally.
Exactly. So that's just
Lovely.
one branch. Then you go on to the second branch, the niyamas. These are more personal observances. So the first two branches, I like to call them kind of like the Ten Commandments. I grew up Christian, right? Or Catholic. So they're because it's funny. It's 5 and 5, so they totally make 10.
Oh
So I
yeah.
call them like the 10 commandments of yoga. So one is more kind of outward observances. The first one's more outward. The next one's more personal ones, right?
Okay.
So again, we have 5. These are just personal practices for self-discipline and growth. They include our first one we call saucha, purity. Again, so they all overlap even with the yamas. Purity can be nonviolence again, right? Pure thoughts, right? Purity in mind, voice, action. Are your actions pure? Are you doing something for self motivation, or are you really doing it out of the trueness of your heart?
Giving to others,
What?
sure. Service to
Yeah,
others.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. Beautiful one. Santosha, contentment. It's just gratitude.
Ooh, yeah, that's a big one.
Finding
Yep.
a daily gratitude practice. I tell
Yep.
all my clients and students, we work with glimmers, especially lately. I've been seeing that a lot. That's been a phrase and it's been showing up everywhere. So I love that. It's like the universe telling me it's a form of gratitude. We look all day or we try to find our triggers throughout the day, right? Or our
Uh,
mind's so accustomed to finding those triggers throughout the day. What really ticked me off? But if we can start training our mind, maybe start with 3 things before you go to bed or when you wake up, glimmers. 3 things that made you happy throughout the day or that you're looking forward to, right?
love that.
Our brain is a muscle, so the more and more we do it, it's going to get accustomed to do more of that than look for the
Yep.
triggers, right? But that's a very, very, I mean, gratitude practice in any holistic practice. Great. Um, our third niyama we have, it's called tapas, self-discipline. So again, it could be your meditation practice, just your practice in general. Are you disciplined? And that does not mean doing an hour each day, 5 minutes a day. For my breath clients, 5 minutes a day. Practice 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes in the afternoon, 5 minutes at night, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's it. You'll be more consistent with 5 minutes every day than 1 hour once a week or 1 hour trying to do that because not everyone has an hour a day, right?
Right, right, right.
Um, then we have self-study. We call it svadhyaya, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
That one, again, that can be a whole multitude of things. It could be reading. For me, it's just reading all these books, right? I think you as well, probably all are spiritual kind of people. We're all kind of
Seekers,
seekers. We're forever students. That's what I always say. So like
forever
I have
students. Absolutely.
exactly, what next certification or class am I taking? What next Reiki class or what sound healing or something? What next book am I going to read on self-help or yoga? So yeah, that's svadhyaya. That's self-study, right? You're studying more, right? But it's also studying yourself. And that can also be, what are your triggers? So sitting with yourself. This is where the meditation practice comes. Sometimes just sitting with yourself, noticing what the triggers are, noticing how you feel in the body, what comes up, and again, don't get attached to it. Just notice. This is a good time to maybe journal.
Yep.
Um, and then see those consistencies as they come up. What is it telling you? Because I can be your instructor, Chloe, you can be the life coach, whatever, but we're not going to give you the answers. We can help guide you, but really only you know the answers, right? The student really only knows the answers to their own
Mm-hmm.
personal healing. So that's really important, self-study. And then finally, the last one for this niyama is, we call it one of my favorites. It comes also from like the bhakti practice, that devotional. It was called Ishvara Pranidhana. It's just surrendering to a higher power. And that can
Yeah.
be anything, okay? That could be, you can call it God, creator, source. I mean, you see behind me, I have a picture of Ganesh, the elephant god. I mean, but
Uh-huh.
doesn't mean I believe totally. But I
I
mean, I
actually
have
do.
Jesus across from me. I have exactly. But it's just once you give up that control, again, that possessiveness. But once you give up that control in anything, you notice that life flows more easily, at least to me. And I mean, everyone. And you just kind of surrender and you do what you can and say,
Right.
let go, let God or universe take whatever, lead me.
That's a big
Yeah.
one.
So
That's a big one because that one also requires belief and faith.
exact faith,
Yeah.
which faith, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So that's a big
But
one too.
just as you can see, just those are just 2 limbs. Those are the first 2 limbs of
Yeah.
yoga, and those itself can be a lifetime practice. And we didn't even; those are not even physical practices. Okay,
Right. Right.
the
Right. We
physical
haven't even
practice
touched on
happens.
those yet.
Yeah, 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 yeah. The physical one is the third limb. This is the asanas. This is the postures, right? Okay.
Okay.
And all the postures are really teaching us the old yoga. It's not even these crazy standing on your head that you might see now. Asana really just means seat in Sanskrit, right? But it's your meditative seat, right?
Okay.
So the whole goal of all these was to meditate for a long while, right? To find these deep
Mm.
states, right? So you can only do that when you're in a comfortable seat.
Yes, right.
Okay. So this is what the physical practice is teaching us to be comfortable in this meditative seat. Okay. So exactly, especially us nowadays, we're more sedentary with our lifestyle. So we have tight hip flexors, hips, right?
That's
A
right.
lot of us just can't sit on the floor, as I say with my kids, crisscross applesauce,
Ah,
because the knees are too, or excuse me, the hips are too tight, so the knees are going to come up, right? So we're not going to be able to sit an hour breathing like that comfortable.
well,
We might not even be able to sit
this
5 minutes.
well, this is what happens to me. I mean, I take a yoga class at a local community center and I go, and this is part of what my challenge is actually sitting comfortably enough so that I'm not fidgeting around. Because my understanding is the idea, right? When we think about meditation, of course, it can happen in a multitude of ways. You can be walking, it can be people can do active meditation. But for non-active meditation, and if you're seated and trying to achieve a state of stillness, both in the mind and in the body, I struggle with this because I'll be fidgeting because I'm uncomfortable in my body and then it distracts the mind. So my understanding is just like you said, isn't that the whole point of the poses is actually to be comfortable enough to be able to hold a position, engage in some of this stillness? Is that right?
And back in the day too, there was not even this many poses that we have today. Like there
Ah,
were very few. It was very basically all just meditative poses, like seated poses. That's what a majority of the poses were in the old
really?
ancient, the old, yeah, yoga, yeah. So a lot of our poses come more from, I guess, 19th century, I think it was. Um, but it comes from like gymnasts and
Oh,
acrobatics. That's where we get a lot of the poses. But I mean,
so
science also shows now that, of course, the more open we are, and the more open we are in our body, we're going to feel better. And that's my theory too. The more open we are in the body, we're going to feel better, and act
sure.
better. But yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah.
Okay.
So then from the asanas, so then we have our asanas, but then we move into our fourth branch, which is our breathing practices. Now in Sanskrit,
Mm,
we call that pranayama. So we have that word yama from our first one, the yamas in there.
okay.
Can also be restraint. So you can say breath control, breath restraint, but these are all these different breathing techniques we do in our yoga practice, right? Could be,
Okay.
you might know, we call it ujjayi breathing, that ocean breathing.
I don't know if I've heard
It's
of that.
so it's three. I call it three different names in yoga. In Sanskrit, we call it ujjayi breathing, but I just like to call it. A lot of people we call it Darth Vader breathing because it sounds like you're Darth Vader. You can start like you're fogging up a mirror, but then you just close the mouth, so it's a slight constriction of the glottis on the back of the throat. So it's just you're really just controlling the breath and allowing more. It's more breath control there, so you can get into your breathing practices. Maybe that diaphragmatic breathing, that belly breathing as well. It's an audible breath. So we use that a lot in yoga, like
Hmm.
that deep kind of that breath. That's what we call an ujjayi breath, and it helps to stimulate our vagus nerve and all that. But
Okay.
yeah, so we get our pranayama practices, our breath controls. This is regulating the breath. So the whole theory we call prana in yoga. Prana is the word for the life force or energy, right?
Uh-huh. Right.
Again, every kind of practice has a name for it. In Reiki, we call it Ki. That's the life force. In Tai Chi, it's Chi, right? Chinese medicine is Chi. Energy, life force energy, whatever you want to call it. Bioenergetic energy. So it's
Yep.
finding ways to control this flow throughout the body. Again, we're so much more than physical. We're also an energetic body.
Right. So these
So
are the
we
subtle,
can
basically, this is the subtle energetic
the
bodies that
more
we're talking
subtle
about.
practices. Exactly, exactly. So now it starts to get a little bit more subtler. So you move from the mental processes, the physical process, now breathing, more subtle. But science also backs this up too with our breathing practices. Then we have our fifth limb called pratyahara. It's like a withdrawal of the senses. So
Mm,
we can do this in yoga practices when we close our eyes, right? We're
mm,
taking away our vision of sight. So the whole kind of theory of this is, right, stimulus is kind of a distraction, right? And
right.
the whole goal of our meditation is to find that oneness kind of concentration. So if we have these outside stimuli, we're going to constantly be distracted, right? Or we won't be able to listen as deep.
Right.
So couple, like I said, closing the eyes and you can combine them. So like for one of our pranayama practices I like to do, it's called bumblebee breathing. I do this a lot with the kids as well. They love this. Where it's just when you breathe in, you'll breathe in through the nose, and then you just make a humming sound with your mouth closed. And when you
What?
do that, again, it stimulates your vagus nerve. It's going to oscillate your vagus nerve. And by doing that, the vagus nerve triggers what we call our parasympathetic nervous system. So it's
Hmm.
that rest and digest. So it just helps to regulate the nervous system
Yeah,
there.
I've heard that about
So,
this
yeah.
humming. So it just is
Oh,
right. Yeah, I've
you
heard
just
about
like
humming,
go,
and I do it in my
yeah.
yoga class. It's just breathe in,
Hmm. So
hum.
you can just, so that's a pranayama practice there. And there you go. That's a yoga practice for people. You don't have to do any movement, right? But then you can combine a pranayama practice with your pratyahara, your withdrawal of senses here by we combine this here by maybe closing the eyes. And then what
Mhm.
we like to do with this one too is maybe you can do this with a mudra, we call it a hand gesture, or you can just close the eyes, whatever's comfortable for you. But then you can also close your ears as well. So now we're taking sight and our hearing away, right? So now we're going to, as you practice this, you might actually feel those oscillations, those little vibrations even more. For me, in
Mm,
my practice, I do. But then that helps me to go more inward. Okay.
sure.
That helps me to feel how I'm feeling that in the body more, right? And I can maybe interpret those signals or those feelings to what's going on in life.
Yeah.
Makes sense there,
And
right?
like putting
So,
your, yeah, and so closing your eyes, putting your ears, plugging them, and like that. And it's almost like I've done this one too, and it's almost like tuning the body. It's like almost like a tuning like
exactly.
an
It's like a
instrument
tuning
and
fork,
stuff.
right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So that's
That's
branch number 5 there. Then we have our branch number 6 we call dharana or concentration. And then this is just single pointed concentration, right? So this is a form of meditation. One common one that we like to do is trakata, it's called, or candle gazing. Again, so this is training the mind just to singly point, concentrate on something, right? And I always said, like, we're human, right? Our attention span's going to go on and off and on and off, right? But the most important thing is just to remember those moments when we do kind of lose that concentration and not be hard on ourselves. It's fine. We're all going to
right.
do it.
It's releasing the judgment
No
of
one,
those.
no one can sit there. I don't think anyone humanly possible can really sit there for an hour and stare at a candle. That's totally fine, right? It's when you notice you're not paying attention, right? Just bringing your attention back, right? Or bringing your
Right.
attention. You can do this with your breath, right? Concentrating on the breath. So maybe counting the breath,
Mm,
okay? And if you lose track of the count, guess what? You come back to the count.
right.
That's your concentration practice there.
Hmm.
Another form people do that. This you might have seen with mantras. So this is also a yoga form again. So just reciting mantras. You can say om om om. Affirmations. Okay, if you don't resonate with mantras, affirmations. I am love. I am great. Whatever you resonates with you. Just
Hmm.
repeating that. Words are so powerful and they have these
Absolutely.
frequencies. The more and more you say them. So that's our 6th branch. Then we have our 7th branch we call dhyana, meditation. So this is just a deeper form of meditation here. So it's like once we're fully concentrated on something, right? Once we're comfortable, and they all also kind of build on each other.
Yeah,
So
I was just gonna say,
going
it's
back,
almost like we're like
ex
building up to what we're trying to get to. You
exactly.
develop
So the
skills over time, and it gets you to,
exactly. So again, we're gonna teeter totter throughout all these practices, but once we get into that third practice, that asana, okay, here we go. As you're stretching, here we go, yamas, are you not causing violence, ahimsa, right? Are you true to yourself? Are you in the pose that you need to be right now, right? So maybe one day your hips are more open and you can get into that pigeon pose a little bit more, and that's fine, right? Okay, so now there's your asana pose. But then if you're going too far past it, then you're not practicing it.
right.
Then we want to breathe and we want to also breathe in those poses. That's a good indication if we've gone too far. Okay,
Hmm.
going more inward, we can practice the concentration and then the meditation. This just says once we meditate or focus on that candle, that mantra, once we find that single pointed concentration, we can we become that, right? In yoga, we say
Right.
soham, I am that.
What was
Yeah, we
that?
just
Say it
become
again.
that. Soham, it's I am,
Soham as I
or I
am.
am that. Yeah, I am
Mm.
that. Um, so it's
Yeah.
just like, yeah, we are whatever we want to be, whatever we believe, or whatever our thoughts are. Wherever energy, what is it? Wherever energy flows, or thoughts go, energy flows.
But Soham is, I mean, the I am, that statement in of itself is very powerful, and that is across many different belief systems. So I just didn't know what it was in Sanskrit. So yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah.
So
And that's a mantra. So you can just continue. That's a yoga practice. If you want to 5 minutes a day, sit down or maybe on your walk, just keep saying, but mindfully, right?
with
Soham,
intention,
soham.
yeah, with the
With
yeah.
intention. There you go.
Hmm.
And really believe that, embody and envision that, and then you become that. And then finally, our last one is, which many of us do not find in this lifetime, and it's totally fine. This is the enlightenment we call in yoga samadhi, we call this. So this is their term for enlightenment or
Samadhi.
liberation. So it's the
Yeah.
ultimate, exactly. It's the ultimate goal. It's just where the practitioner experiences oneness with self, others, universe, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
achieves the spiritual liberation. So this is where we get the eightfold path. So this is
Wow.
basically what yoga is. So this is why every time we say it's so much more than just the physical, it is. Like I said,
Right. So wow.
what a
So
great
that's
time for
great.
Virgo season.
Yeah, it is. It is a great time for Virgo season. Indeed, it is. Yeah.
So one practice in our Ayurveda, which is really cool in our Virgo season, which I put in my newsletter for the Virgo season as well, is the practice of what we call abhyanga, or it's oil massaging. So they look at it for more of an energetic. They would say, towards Virgo, since it's Earth, right? We're coming into this fall season. Fall is made up of energies of cold and dryness, or wind energy and space that they had, right? Out of the
Yeah.
five classical elements.
Fall and
Um,
autumn. Yes.
they say is wind and space. So throughout these times, this is what we have, vata energy. This is what I was referring to myself as in the beginning. So people, we have these constitutions, these three energies that are in us. So they call them vata, kapha, and pitta. Vata would be the space and air element. Kapha is more the earth, water element, the grounding kind of slow element, oily, and then pitta is that fiery water element. I
Mm,
mean, everyone has a mixture of all three, but some of us are predominantly one. Me being
okay.
a majority of us, Vata, right? We talk fast, again, creative, just like you were saying with the three of diamonds in the beginning. That's why I was laughing with that. But we say Earth or the universe also has this energy as well. So as we go into our fall season, this Virgo season here in the northern hemisphere, we have it's colder, right? So we see a lot of that wind, that dryness. The leaves are losing their moisture, the water, right? So they say in order to find that balance, people like me who might have this vata already, we might be prone to maybe drying of the skin. This might show up as drying
Yeah.
of the skin, cracking of the bones, right? So in order to balance that, here's a practice, abhyanga, oil massaging, right? Oil is
Hmm.
going to add back that kapha kind of energy. We say that earth, that grounding energy, that liquid, that moist kind of energy.
Nourishing,
So exactly,
cleansing.
so another, you can up it up, you can vamp it up, excuse me, by warming the oil too. Now
Hmm.
you're balancing that cold element of
Mm,
fall with the warming element of, and just that practice itself is a beautiful kind of self care practice, or like it's one of the most utmost forms of like self love, they say, because when you're really doing it and you warm up the oil and you're really massaging maybe your joints, and you do this all throughout your body, right? You can do this before a bath. And with any kind, I use sesame oil. You can put essential oils to your liking in there. And then when you do that, it's like you're giving yourself a hug. Like you're really feeling what makes your body and yourself feel good. And only you can
mm-hmm.
really do that, no one else, right?
Right.
So it's really like you're just giving yourself a giant warm hug.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
beautiful
So that's
practice of like tuning in to and listening and giving space to be tuning into your body, listening to your body, being in this physical groundedness of touch and, it's the sensories, the senses are all in this third dimension, like the physical world. And that's Virgo is an earth sign that is getting, is about the body and the physical world. So I love that, just like getting into a practice of actually touching and tuning in and also nurturing, like touch itself can be very nurturing. And so like you're physically nurturing yourself through that practice as well. And I love that. It's almost like the bridging of, my birthday is on the equinox. So I think about this a lot of like the bridging between the summer and well, fall is, right? Bridging between the summer of the extreme heat and the cold. You've got that mix in between. I love that the air is almost like bringing us to the next season in some ways. But that warmth of summer kind of in contrast to that cold, I just love that combination there in the middle. That's lovely.
Wow. Just real quick, going back to even yoga, it's like there's
Sure.
even more styles of yoga. Like there's a restorative, yin, and stuff. So I'm more of a gentle yogi. I'm a more not what we would call a power yogi. So I do a lot of gentle yin or restorative kind of, more of like a yoga therapy kind of aspect. Again, treating the body as a whole, right? But what I do once a month, I like to do a full moon Reiki intention circle, which you came to. Yes, yes. So my next one will be, I'm planning on doing it the Mondays before the full moon, and that one is virtual. And I
Okay.
do that from 7 to 8 Eastern time since I'm in New Jersey. And that one I love. So we create a nice little community and we start with a little invocation to ground the energy. We'll go around, maybe talk, we'll create a nice little space, see why we're here, maybe what your intentions are today. And you can share whatever you want or do not want to share. And there's a no judgment free zone. Like Planet Fitness, but we do that, and then I will talk about the energy of the month and the full moons because I also, which you are a part of as well. I have a newsletter which I encourage people to get on because that one I like to put a lot of information on. That's where you
Yeah,
can
you have
really
your
get me and
newsletters
all.
are great. They're filled with information. It's free to get it. I'll make sure that this info is in the
Yeah,
show notes as well. So if people want to sign up for it, and he packs it with a bunch of astrological information, practical takeaways, and tips for you to do with the upcoming whatever's going on astrologically. Yeah, it's full of info. So we'll definitely make sure that's in the show notes for people to check out as well.
thank you, thank you. Yeah, because my whole theory is again for this is where I came up with the name for my little company, Nature's Energy. First of all, I'm a little fairy. I love being out in nature all the
Yes, you
time.
are.
Like anytime you can see me, I'm hiking or just outside. But yeah, just it's a love of nature, love of Mother Earth. So it's just that whole mixture and using the energy of nature just to find that zen and that oneness, that balance. It's
Yeah,
always
totally.
finding that. For
Yeah.
my online classes that we're talking about, after the invocation, I'll talk about the full moon, the month again, ways to transition into the next kind of zodiac season or astrological season. We'll have some oracle cards I'll pull for the collective, and then we'll get into a nice long Reiki journey meditation that will
Yeah, which are
specialize with
beautiful.
the energy of that full with the full moon when and then I'll give distance Reiki to all of you and it's just a nice, especially if you're on the East Coast, since it is 7 to 8. It's just a nice before bed. But wherever you're at, and I just
Totally.
love because you can be at home in your bed. Cameras can be on or off. Again.
Yeah,
But yeah,
it was great. I loved coming to the last one and receiving your medicine, as it would call it, by guiding through that the Reiki practice and then your wisdom about the astrology and how to lean into that upcoming. So I loved it. And yeah, we'll make sure your info is in the show notes. And actually, from that last one, from the one I was at, I don't know if I mentioned this to you. That when I was driving home yesterday, I went out into the wilderness, found some a fairy space of my
that was the
own.
car.
Yeah, and on my way home, right in front of my car, like
That was
right.
the card we picked. Remember?
Yes, it is. It
My
is.
God. My
So,
God.
so isn't that interesting? Yeah,
Crazy.
that was just last night before we
Crazy.
were recording this. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Wow.
I just got a tap
Wow.
on the wall.
Wow.
The divines at work there. Yeah, I'm forgetting what bat
Look
was.
at
I'm gonna have
that.
to look that up again. I took notes on it.
The bat
Uh,
was, oh my God, like a resurrection was a shorter. So it's like coming out of the light from the darkness. Don't cling on.
yes,
Again,
that's right.
aparigraha, non-possessiveness, you
That's
know,
right.
the bat's able to let go and fly out of the cave.
That's right. That's right. That's what it was about. Yeah. Working through the darkness
Yeah.
and out of the darkness towards the
There's
light.
always a light at the end of that tunnel.
And it was
And
also
also that was trusting
representative
the
of the
universe.
Phoenix rising. There was something correlated with that as well.
And it was also trusting the universe, remember? Because the bat is blind and trusts its sonar. So it
Ah,
trusts its hearing, right? So we're
ah,
blind, but putting that faith into the universe. So that Ishvara Pranidhana, right? That surrender.
beautiful.
Hmm.
Beautiful. I love
Uh-huh.
that. I love that. Yeah, and that's
Yes,
not always
yes.
easy for me to do is that full surrender, but my faith and trust is a lot is high.
Not
So
easy for
yeah,
many of us, don't worry.
that's right.
Uh-uh.
Well, maybe that's like
No.
the final closing message for people is this bat that out of the darkness we move into the light, kind of like this phoenix rising. So if people have been going through a lot, which they probably have been, I think the collective has been on a lot of all different levels. that just know that we're moving into the light basically, and that whatever work that has been done on healing or what have you with the darkness is leading to the light, and to listen and to trust that the universe has got us and there's a divine plan. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
You know
awesome.
what I
Chris, is
wanted to
there,
add, Chloe?
yeah,
I
please.
wanted to add something too, because in addition, because I love to give free stuff, but if anyone wants to listen to, I upload free meditations on Insight Timer. You ever want to practice, and a lot of them are yoga practices. So there is that breathing, that bumblebee breath that we work today. And they're Insight, it's on Insight Timer. So if you're familiar with the Calm app or Headspace, very similar. You can get it on iOS, Android, and then just look up my name and I'm there. And I've been trying to upload, not every week, but I've been pretty consistent a little lately, more uploading more. There is a Reiki journey on there that we've done from our Holy Fire class, our master class. I did I think the River Peace, I think I did. So that is up there for free. And then, yeah, there will be some premium content, but that's, you don't know.
I didn't, yeah, I am not on there, but I was just like going in to look at it. So is it free, just so people know, is it free to sign up for it? Do you have to
Yeah.
pay?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a free app. So the only time you have to pay is if you want the premium,
Is
and
like
that's to
if
get like
you
premium
pay for certain people's stuff that they're selling or something like that. But the
like
app
a
itself
premium
is
meditation, which there are countless of free meditations, and also I think with the free version, you just can't fast forward in the beginning. Like you can't fast forward tracks. That's what it is. There
oh,
might be
cool.
some more, but it's there. Yeah, but
Okay, cool.
and all my meditations there are 7 minutes maybe. Like the longest ones are the Reiki ones. They're like a half hour.
Sure.
But 7, 10
Yeah.
minutes. That's what I say. You can if you
Thanks.
have 7 minutes, that can be your practice.
Awesome.
So
Cool. All right. Well, thanks so much. I'll make sure that's in the show notes. Thanks so much. And yeah, thanks for all these practical tips. I'm hoping listeners are taking away some practical tips of how they can implement some of this stuff in their life.
or I was going to say, yoga is the cessation of the fluctuations of the mind.
Yes, that's right. Yes, there we
At
go.
the end of the day, if there's anything,
Yes.
yoga is not just a pose, but yoga is the cessation of the fluctuations of the mind. What does that mean to
Cessation
you?
of the fluctuations of the mind. Yoga is the cessation of the fluctuations of the mind. I love that. Love that,
Yep,
if nothing
yep.
else. All right. Well, thanks so much, Chris, for being here. And yeah, I hope to have you back again sometime in the future. And I'm just really grateful for you being here today. And thanks to all the listeners who are out there now. And I'll see y'all back here next time. Thanks so much, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.